at one point or another, as a web developer, you might need to iterate over the properties or the values of an object, of a JavaScript object. In today's video, we're going to talk about functions that help you iterate over an object. So let's get started. Here I have an example, just a simple object that has three properties, right? Is valid, text, and street number. All of them are of different type, just so that we get a pretty good idea of what it means to actually iterate over an object. So you might have watched my presentation about for loops. If not, you can check it out up top. Basically, what I was going over is a way to iterate over an object using the for in loop. A for in loop goes something like this. You go for let, let's say prop in O. O is our object. And if I try to console log this, prop, and run our JS, you'll notice that I get is valid, text, and street number. So what I get here is actually the properties of the object using a for in loop. So that's really nice. The only problem with this is that you also have to check if the property is owned by that object. So you have to do something like if o.has own property of prop, right? And basically execute your code inside this if statement. And I would do basically the same thing here, but in some cases, not actually checking if it has its own properties, it's going to go over properties that are not actually its own by means of prototypical inheritance or other quirks in JavaScript. Alright, so that's nice, but I don't really want to check this every single time. How can I do this better? Right, so I have here, this works, and if I really want to actually type in the value, I can just do O of prop. And if I run this, you'll notice I get the actual value. Here I get is valid is true, text is house, and street number is 5. So simple enough, it works. But we can do better. The first function that helps you iterate over an object is called object.keys. So this is how it goes. So you start with an object, with the object class itself or interface. And this guy has a lot of useful function. And what we're looking at here is the keys function. This guy takes in an object. So we're going to give it the object, and it returns back an array of all the keys. So if I console log this, so as you can see, we got an array of every single property in the object. And this guy behind the scenes actually checks if it has its own keys, so it doesn't go over inherited properties. Okay. Basically, what we can do now, if we have these keys, we can actually use another for loop, a for off loop this time. So something like this to actually go over the object, and we can actually console log, well, let's say prop and O of prop. The same thing we did with the for in loop. So now if I try to run this, you'll notice I get both the properties and the values. And this is equivalent to the previous example, but we don't actually need an if statement there. So this is really nice. Now the second function that might actually help you more when iterating over an object is called object.values. And this guy, what it does is instead of returning each key of the object, it's going to return each value of that object. And of course, it's going to check for if it has its own properties. Right, so you don't have to do that if statement. So here, instead of saying prop, I'm gonna rename this to, let's say, value. Okay, and I don't have to print this one either. So we're just gonna print the value of that, of whatever this guy returns. Right, so it's the same thing, it's just an array, but this time is an array of values. So if I clear the screen and run this, you'll notice I get true, house, and 5, which are the values of our object. Right, so that can be useful in some niche cases. I just want you to be aware of this one. Now, lastly, the third function that might help you iterate over an object is called object.entries, and this one is a bit interesting. So if I just simply call this, so it's object.entries, and it goes the same way. You just have to pass in the object itself. And if I console log the result, you'll notice that I get a very interesting structure here. I get an array, right, of arrays where the first element is always the property, right? So we have is valid, text, and street number. So that's always a string. And the second element is actually the value of that string. And well, this can be used in some cases where you want both the property and the value, and you don't want to actually get the value through getting the property and then saying O of property like we did before, right? So in this case, it gets all of them all at once. You don't have to do any checks. So you can simply iterate over these. So if I say a for let's say entry of this one, I can actually get both the property and the value. If I say something like this, if I clear the screen, you'll notice that I get the same result as before. Now, the really cool part with entries is that if you have access to this structuring in your project, it can be the best way to iterate over an object's properties. What is destructuring? Well, I've talked about it in the video up top, so check it out if you don't know. It's a really, really useful feature that basically everyone should use at this point. So what you should do here is say, instead of entry, just say let and go key and value, or prop or value, whatever you want to call that. And if I just console log these, go prop and value, and run this, you'll notice I get the same result. So this is really, really nice, I think, because think about it. If I just get the keys and I do O of prop every single time, well, that's a bit more work every single time it executes this line of code. But if I do object.entries, it automatically gets everything for us. So this is a really nice way to implement iterating over an object. So I hope you guys got something out of it. Just remember those three functions for iterating over an object: object.keys, object.values, and object.entries. Simple enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. Questions in the comments down below, and see you guys next time. Bye.